and welcome to the Monday Night Review. I'm Corinna Harrod. I can't even remember what episode we're on. I think it's 61. Today's one I've been tottering around doing for some time, and I realised I can just do them in parts. They don't need to be all in one go. I have a real fear of missing out something juicy, so I'm just doing this as part one. Japanese mythology and urban legends can make those from other cultures look like kids' stories. My mother grew up in Japan and used to tell us how she was terrified of the film Onibaba, which is a Japanese film from the 1960s, based on the legend that a woman had turned into an oni, which is a demon or troll, usually evil and murderous, as a result of karma or resentment. Now, younger ones are called Kijos and older are called Onibaba, which translate into demon hag. And she would tell us the story of what happened in the film, and we would be fascinated. And so began my love of Japanese mythology and folklore. So today is part one of Japanese spirits and urban legends. I thought we deserved something a little bit upbeat after our trip up Everest. I mean, upbeat. Still fairly horrendous, but there'll be no bodies in the snow. Actually, that's a lie. There may be bodies in the snow. I can't help it. Today's sources are yokai.com, which I'm so happy I found. It's just like an online thing of all Japanese ghosts and spirits. It's just a really nice website. Pleasing website, I should say. Wikipedia, yokaifandom.com, and lots of other places. And one thing that is definitely worth noting about Japanese spirits is that it's incredibly complex. There are different classes, types, and levels of spirits with different characteristics, purposes, and appearances. And they can be animal, part human, visible, invisible. It just makes British ones look like we're really not making any effort whatsoever. So, according to traditional Japanese beliefs, all humans have a spirit or soul called a raikon. When a person dies, the raikon leaves the body and enters a form of purgatory where it waits for the proper funeral and post-funeral rites to be performed so that it can join its ancestors. And if these are done correctly, then the raikon becomes a protector of the family, returning yearly in August during the Obon festival to receive thanks. However, if the person's died in a sudden or violent manner, such as murder or suicide, or if the proper rites have not been performed, or if something like that happens, or if they are influenced by powerful emotions such as desire for revenge, love, jealousy, hatred, or sorrow, especially at the time of death, the raikon is believed to transform into a yorai, which can then bridge the gap back to the physical world. The emotion doesn't need to be particularly strong, but if that thought enters the mind of the dying person, their yorai will come back to complete the action last thought of before returning back into the cycle of reincarnation. So yorai are closest to the Western concept of ghosts. They exist on Earth until they can be laid to rest, either by performing the missing rituals or resolving the emotional conflict that still ties it to the physical plane. If the rituals are not completed or the conflict is left unresolved, the yorai will just carry on with the haunting. And it's thought of those of lower social class who died a violent death or received harsh treatment during their lifetime will return as the most powerful yorai to seek their revenge. But there are different types of yorai. There are yokai, which are spiritual entities, and they can be malevolent, mischievous, friendly, and even helpful. They often have animal features. Some resemble inanimate objects. There is one that's a lantern, and some appear shapeless. There's onyoroi, which are vengeful spirits returned from purgatory to seek vengeance for a wrong done to them in their life. They're capable of causing harm, injuring or even killing their enemies. They can create natural disasters to exact vengeance and are usually depicted as wronged women who are out to exact revenge. There are goyo, who are aristocratic, vengeful ghosts, and they're often those who've been martyrs. And this actually translates as honourable soul, but they can destroy crops, summon typhoons or earthquakes, and yeah, they can be pretty mean. Ayakashi is a group of vengeful spirits that hover above the water, seeking revenge for dying at sea. Mononoke are vengeful spirits who are able to possess people to make them suffer and even kill them. They can also cause diseases in people. There are shapeshifters called Obake, and Obume are mothers who died in childbirth. So as you can see, it makes our British classification of ghosts look rather lackluster. There's literally a spirit for everything. Shinigami is literally translates as death god, and they're spirits that invite humans towards death, sometimes described as monsters, helpers, and creatures of darkness. And the Jibakurai are rare, and these spirits are bound to a specific place or location rather than sort of freely roaming around looking for vengeance. So we're going to talk about some of my favourites today. We've got Bito Bito-san, which is Bito Bito-san is a formless spectre who follows travellers at night, only recognised by the sound of its wooden sandals on the floor, which makes the Bito Bito sound, which is how it gets its name. It's harmless but scary and synchronises its pace with the walker and follows as long as it can, getting closer and closer. So it's obviously like when you stop walking, you stop hearing the sound. Once you realise you're being followed by Bito Bito, you can simply step to one side and say, "After you, Bito Bito-san," and the footsteps will carry on ahead and vanish from earshot. It's about the only harmless one we're going to cover. Then we've got Yuki-onna, who's the snow woman. Now, Yuki-onna are extremely beautiful, long black hair, piercing dark eyes, and snow-white, ageless skin. They prey on travellers lost in the snow, but they can also break into houses and freeze those inside. Sometimes they fall in love with their intended victim and even marry them, though the fact that they don't age means they often get rumbled and it causes the end of the marriage. One legend states that a woman visits a man and becomes his wife, but she always refuses to bathe, and during the really cold winter months, he's worried that she will freeze to death. So he forces her to have a bath, and he puts her in the bath. He goes away, he comes back a couple of minutes later, and she's vanished, leaving only a thin layer of frozen, fragmented icicles. There are many stories of women coming in to warm themselves from the cold, and when they're touched, they turn into swirls of snow. Sometimes the Yuki-onna is hugging a child to keep it warm and asks a passerby to help. As this person hugs the child becomes heavier and heavier before transforming into a pile of snow and freezing the hugger to death by basically burying them under a mound of snow. And it's believed that anyone who's able to withstand the growing weight of the child would go on to have great physical strength. Ame-onna are rain women and usually blamed for the kidnapping of children. Now, unlike the Yuki-onna, they have a haggard, depraved appearance, licking the rain off their hands and arms and always drenched in rainwater. When there's a heavy rainfall and farmers are happy for their crops, it's believed that Ame-onna roam the streets looking for female babies to steal. Many of them are believed to be women who have lost their own babies, transformed into onna through grief, and trying to replace what they've lost. Seems really lacking in empathy. You've gone through something, so you just want to revisit this on as many people as possible. One of the most horrendous ones is Teke Teke, who is another spirit named for the sound she makes. The belief is that a schoolgirl falls onto a railway line and dies, being cut in half, and she returns as an onyo, seeking vengeance, lurking in urban areas and around railway stations at night. Since she no longer has a lower body and legs, she travels on either her hands or her elbows, dragging her upper torso and making a scratching or teke-teke sound like her nails on the floor. You often hear her coming before you see her, and she has supernatural speed, meaning even if you try to escape in a car, she can catch you. If she finds someone, she will chase them and slice them in half at the torso, killing them in the way that mimics her own disfigurement, and sometimes she steals their legs. In certain variations, teke-teke will ask the individual over and over again to tell them the location of her missing legs. There could actually be some truth in this story, to a point. It's held that in the years after World War II, a Hokkaido office worker was raped by American soldiers, and shamed and horrified by her ordeal, she threw herself off a railway bridge and was hit by an oncoming train. The impact tore her body in half at the waist, but the severe cold of the Hokkaido night caused her blood vessels to contract and prevented her from bleeding out quickly. Instead, she squirmed and wriggled about for help for several minutes and manages to crawl to the station, where she's seen by an attendant who is just so horrified that instead of trying to help her, just covers her with a plastic tarpaulin, leaving her to die a slow and agonizing death. And so the teke-teke spirit is believed to be either trying to find her legs or seeking revenge on humanity for being left to die in such an agonizing way. Some versions of the story say that teke-teke will visit you in a dream after you've heard her story. Sorry about that. She'll ask you a riddle, and the only way to escape death is to answer correctly. I'm going to tell you just in case, though I have heard this story a lot and have yet to have the dream. She'll ask you, "Do you need your legs?" And you must reply, "I need them right now." Then she will ask you, "Who told you my story?" And you must reply, "Kashima Raiko." Ka as in mask, Shi as in death, Ma as in demon, Rai as in ghost, and Ko as in accident. If you answer her riddles without mistake, she may just let you live. Kushisaki Onna is another onyo, and it's believed that she is seeking revenge for the horrific mutilation she endured when she was alive. It's said that she was the adulterous wife of a samurai, and he slit her mouth from ear to ear. Her name, Kushisaki Onna, translates as slit-mouthed woman, and she comes to lone travellers at dark on roads and alleyways with her mouth covered by either a mask. Sometimes it's specified as a surgical mask, that seems quite pandemic-based, or a fan. And she carries a sharp instrument with her that's either a knife, a machete, a scythe, or a large pair of scissors, and is described as having supernatural speed. She will ask potential victims, "Am I pretty?" If the person answers no, she will kill them with her weapon. And if the person answers yes, she will reveal her mutilated mouth. Then she repeats her question, and if the person responds with no or screams in fright, she will cut them in half. If the response is yes, she will slice the corners of their mouth from ear to ear so they can look just like her. You can survive an experience with Kushisaki Onna by using one of several methods. In some versions of the legend, she'll leave you alone if you answer yes to both of her questions. Though in other versions, she will follow you home and later that night brutally murder you while you sleep. Other survival tactics include replying that she looks average. I don't think that would go down well with any woman, but it'll apparently give you enough time to run away. Although she does apparently have supernatural speed, so I'm not sure how well that would work. Giving or throwing money or sweets. She really likes the kind of candy known as Beko Ame, which is a kind of caramelized sugar sweet. If you throw that, she will stop to pick them up, and then you can run off. Again, I don't know how she doesn't catch you up. She seems kind of easily distracted, which may be how she got into the predicament in the first place. The story of Kushisaki Onna caused so much hysteria in the 1970s. Some schools would make groups of children walk home, accompanied by other parents or teachers. Hanako-san can be translated as Hanako of the toilet. haunts the school loos. It's worth mentioning that if you are scared of ghosts, then Japanese loos are somewhere to avoid. According to legend, Hanako-san is the spirit of a young girl who haunts school toilets. Though details of her physical appearance vary, it's commonly believed that she has bobbed hair and is wearing a red skirt or dress. Some versions of the stories have Hanako-san murdered by a stranger or an abusive parent in the school loo. In other versions, she's completed suicide in the school loo, but lots say that she was killed in a World War II air raid while hiding in the school loo during a game of hide and seek. Unlike the loo lurker we're going to mention next, Hanako-san is a ghost you summon rather than that just appears. And so you summon her by entering the girls' loo, usually on the 3rd floor of a school. You knock 3 times on the 3rd stall and ask if Hanako-san is present. If Hanako-san is there, she will reply with some variation of "yes, I am." What happens next varies from story to story. So some say you might see the appearance of a bloody or ghostly hand. It could be the hand or Hanako-san herself, which will then pull you into the loo, which could lead to hell. If that's not extreme enough, one version says you'll be eaten by a 3-headed lizard who's protecting Hanako-san's privacy. And versions of this story date back to the 1470s, though I'm fairly sure schools and their loos were very different back then. They were very different back then. Loo stuff is not for me. So then you've got Akamanto, which translates as red coat, and it's another masked spirit lurking in the loos. And this story dates back to around the 1930s, and this time the spirit is haunting public school bathrooms, wearing a long red coat and a mask covering his face. And some say that that he's very handsome under the mask and will haunt a specific stall, usually one with an old-style squat loo. I can't think of anything worse. Akamanto will appear and ask you if you want red paper or blue paper. Some say red cape or blue cape. If you choose the red option, your body will be lacerated, leaving you so drenched in blood that you look like you're wearing a red cloak. In some tellings, the body is removed from the spine and tied around the neck like a cape. Japanese mythology is brutal. If you choose the blue option, the consequences range from being strangled, so that your face goes blue, or all the blood being drained from your body, leaving you lying on the floor with a blue face. If you try to outsmart Akamanto by asking for different colour paper, cloak or cape or whatever he's asked you, you will be dragged to the underworld or hell as a result. And in some versions, choosing yellow paper will result in the occupant's head being forced into the toilet until they drown in filth. Ignoring the spirit, rejecting all options and running away means you have a possibility of surviving. I feel instantly constipated. So then we have Onibaba, the person who started it all. Now, the real story of Onibaba is not like the film. The film I've seen is fairly terrifying. Not terrifying if you're into really terrifying. I mean, it's not The Ring, but it's deeply sinister and it's black and white and there's masks involved. So Onibaba are old women who have been human once but have turned into monsters. Some have horns and or fangs, but many look like harmless, normal old women living in huts in the mountains and forests. They will offer shelter and food to weary travellers and then late at night transform into their demonic witch self who will catch and eat their guests. Sometimes Onibaba are created from women who've been forced to live in exile from communities, either because they're accused of crimes or during times of hardship when older women in the family are taken out to the forest and left to die so the family have one last mouth to feed. Brutal. The Japanese can be brutal. Can you imagine taking your granny out to a forest and being like, sorry, we can't afford to feed you, so we're just going to leave you here. No wonder there's huts full of angry women. One of the first stories of Onibaba tells of a traveller finding a cave to rest in, and an old lady lives there and she welcomes him in, but she says that she's running out of firewood, so she needs to go and collect more. Before she leaves, she tells the traveller not to look further into the back of the cave, which of course he does, and he sees a massive, huge pile of human bones. He obviously freaks out and runs away, but when Oni Baba returns and realises what's happened, she transforms into hag-like form and gives chase. Again, she's got supernatural speed, and she catches up with him, but he takes an icon from his bag and starts to chant a sutra, and as he does so, the icon becomes a shaft of light and it kills Oni Baba, and he buries her near the Abukuma River in a place still called Kuruzuk, which translates as the Black Mound, and that's believed to be where Oni Baba is buried. And that is part one of Japanese spirits and urban legends. I would love to hear from you if there's some that you know about that have missed off. They are so mind-blowing. I really recommend looking at yokai.com if this floats your boat, because there are just loads there that I went for all the human ones. There are loads of animal ones. There's a lot. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I wanted to keep it less murdery because all I'm going to tell you is that we've got, on our trip around the USA, we're stopping at California next, and anyone who's into true crime knows I've got my hands full with California. I love to hear from you, so please send an email to themondaynightrevue@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, where else? YouTube, TikTok at The Monday Night Review. And you can come over and join us on Patreon, where we're The Monday Night Review, and you can listen to all episodes ad-free. You can get extra stories to read, and you get an extra mini-sode every week. And last week's mini-sode was one of my favourites. So if you want to hear about a crazy Finn who takes 30 meth pills and skis for his life, then head on over to Patreon. And until next week, be kind, stay safe, and always check the back seat before you drive.